Welcome to FPL Differential XI, a series where we pick a team of 11 lowly owned players who we predict to score the most points for the upcoming game week, to assist you in gaining substantial rank over other fantasy managers. There's just 3 rules. The squad must be worth no more than 82.5 million, each player must be owned by a maximum of 10% of total players in the game, and we're only allowed to pick a maximum of 3 players from a single team. A silhouette of each player we've selected is already on the pitch, so feel free to play along by seeing how many of the 11 you can correctly guess. First up in goal is David Raya for Brentford's home match against Bournemouth. Even without Tony, Brentford looked very good in both attack and defence against a fairly underwhelming Liverpool last week. On the flip side, Bournemouth have struggled to score goals since the Premier League restarted just before the new year. Brentford have been defensively solid at home this season, and I expect them to dominate this match and shut out Bournemouth. To begin with in defence, we've gone with Luca Dean from Aston Villa. Villa have a home game against Leeds, and it's likely to be a close encounter. However, since Unai Emery took charge, they've managed to put together much more convincing performances against some of the top teams in the league. There seems to be a lot of more energy in the Villa team, and Dean always has the upside of corners and direct free kicks. Joining him is Thiago Silva for Chelsea's home game against Crystal Palace. Although Chelsea have been largely disappointing this season, Palace have struggled themselves, especially in the scoring department. It's often difficult to predict Potter's starting 11, but it seems like Thiago Silva is an integral part of his defence. Not only this, but I would argue that Thiago Silva is the most likely player in the Chelsea defence to grab a goal from a set piece, and I just think it makes him one of the best differential defensive picks this week. Finally, to make the 3-man defence is Manuel Akanji for Man City's double game week against Man United and Tottenham. Although this double game week hasn't technically been confirmed yet, if it were to happen, Akanji is arguably a great option. With Diaz suffering a fairly long-term injury, it seems that Akanji is fairly nailed starter in that City defence, with one of the best defences in the league currently. Although these are 2 tough fixtures, at just 5 million and under 2% owned, Akanji is a great differential this week, and there's always the odd chance of him picking up a goal from a set piece. First up to make the midfield is my personal pick of the week, and it's Mitoma for Brighton's home game against Liverpool. On paper, you could say that this is a very tough looking match for Brighton, but Liverpool have put up very poor defensive stats this season, and Brighton are the perfect team to exploit them. Liverpool appear to be defensively weakest on their right side, where Alexander-Arnold plays, and that's the exact position that Mitoma will be finding space in and behind. Mitoma looks sharp since the Premier League restarted, and I can definitely see him returning in this game. Joining him is Joe Linton for Newcastle against Fulham. Joe Linton looks like a completely different player since Eddie Howe started managing Newcastle last season, and at the moment, he's an integral part of why they're performing so well. Joe Linton seems to have solidified his place on the left side of Newcastle's front 3, and against a leaky Fulham defence, it's very possible that he picks up something from this game, especially as the reverse fixture ended 4-1. Along with the Newcastle centre-backs, he's one of the players who finds themselves on the end of plenty of set pieces, and there's always the chance of a headed goal. Next up is Jack Grealish for Man City's double game week against United and Spurs. Ever since the restart, Pep seems to have more faith in Grealish and starts him regularly over the likes of Foden. We saw in Gameweek 17 how Grealish picked up a couple of assists against Leeds, and often found himself in decent goal-scoring positions. With key passers of the ball like De Bruyne, Gundogan and Mahrez playing in and around him, there's no reason why he couldn't deliver something from this double game week. Next, we've gone for Son for Tottenham's likely double game week against Arsenal and Manchester City. These might be the current top 2 teams in the league, but with the way Spurs play, you would have to say these 2 fixtures are Son fixtures. No doubt both Arsenal and City will try to dominate the game against Tottenham, and Spurs will likely sit deep and look to hit them on the counter-attack. I can see Son taking up position alongside the last defender and getting into some decent goal scoring opportunities. Finally, to make the 5-man midfield, we're going with triple Man City, and it's Mahrez ahead of the double Gameweek 20. Ever since the World Cup concluded, Pep has started Mahrez far more often in the Premier League, which makes him a great differential going into this week. He's playing well, and even if he were to start just one of the 2 double Gameweek matches, he can rack up some serious points from multiple different avenues. I would presume that Haaland is now City's first choice penalty taker, but you never know if Mahrez is on the pitch, whether he'll take one. Which leaves 2 forward spots to complete the team, and first up is Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa's home game against Leeds. I can see this match being fairly cagey, with both teams playing with a high level of intensity. This could potentially set it up for a high scoring encounter. Watkins seems to be one of the forwards that's nailed in Emery's starting 11, and with the way they've started playing, I would predict him to get some chances in this game. It's just a question of whether or not he can be clinical with his finishing. Talking of intensity, the last team of the player we've selected has bags of it, Brentford, and the player is Mbemo. Despite Tony's absence against Liverpool, Brentford continue to show why they're a genuinely very difficult team to play against this season. Mbemo is another player who has multiple routes to points: penalties, free kicks, corners, and of course through open play. I expect Brentford to dominate this match against Bournemouth and play most of the game in their opposition's half. It's just a question of whether or not they can bury their chances. Just a quick reminder to let you know that your channel could feature here in the next video. To be in with a chance of winning a channel shout out in the next video, correctly predict the FPL points total of the team in today's video. Details will be down below in the pinned comment. Thanks for joining us on this week's video. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to avoid missing the next one, and I wish you all massive green arrows for the upcoming game week.